Today we're here to listen and learn from our panelists. And overall today, there's been a lot of cool talks on the research and engineering side of Filecoin behind building it, and I've learned a ton. And this panel takes a slightly different angle to the engineering side of Filecoin. Instead of talking about how the protocol is being built, we're talking about things being built on top of the Filecoin protocol. Our set of panelists are engineering awesome solutions to problems at that next layer up on top of Filecoin, as well as other decentralized storage protocols. So we'll hear from them and about what they're up to. And before fully getting started, just want to let everyone know if they have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll try our best to get to them to have our panelists answer. So I'll do some quick intros and then let the panelists fill in the gaps of what I missed. So we have Ashley here, Ashley Turing. He's the CEO of LiveTree. And he has a ton of experience in technology innovation right now, working on LiveTree, which is building a proprietary interactive video entertainment cloud. And it's really dedicated to bringing awareness to sustainability initiatives. Next, we have Brendan. Brendan is an open source guru, open data evangelist. He's been around the IPFS community for a really long time, kind of those OGs. And right now he's working on Query. So he's the founder and caretaker of Query, and Query is helping to create better tooling for data set syncing, versioning, storing, and collaboration. And then finally, we have Noam. Noam's the co-founder and COO of Morpheus.network. Noam's been around a ton in both web development and information security. And currently with Morpheus, he's helping make supply chains more efficient. So working with actual real tangible things, but helping integrate legacy and emerging technologies to make that whole process, the accounting around supply chains, and making sure things are getting from point A to point B at the right time efficiently and well. So that's quick intros. I'll hand it over to our panelists. Maybe Ashley, if you could start by talking more about LiveTree, and really a question that'd be great to answer is what the inspiration for the company really is, and what problems you're really aiming to solve today at a high level.
So, I mean, at a high level, well, firstly, thank you for having me on. Lovely to connect with you, Brendan and Noam, and hopefully we can talk a bit more after this. So the inspiration for the company really stemmed from something we've been doing since the dawn of man. We've been telling each other stories, and those stories are the things that make up our behavior. And we were looking into fireplaces before and telling each other stories, and today we look into screens. And those screens monitor everything that we do. They track everything that we're looking into, and they try to manipulate our behavior. And I started thinking about how can we take this technology and use this powerful storytelling capability to help achieve some of the sustainability development goals set out by the UN. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm hoping to achieve.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. We'll get more into that vision in a bit. Brendan, if you don't mind introducing yourself and Query.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Hopefully. Okay, good. And thanks so much for having us. My name is Brendan, as mentioned, and we work on Query. It's a version control tool for data sets. Query is trying to tackle a hard problem of bringing some of the benefits of version control to data. The big difference between data and code is data gets big and code doesn't. And so Query has been an open source project for a number of years, built on top of IPFS. And we got our start when we tried to build a grassroots distributed archive of EPA.gov. We started in 2016 to try and make sure that we could ensure access to important scientific research data that was released by the government, and just make sure that it was permanently available. It turns out that was really hard to do, and doing that in a way where you could actually have an audit trail that would affirm the veracity of that information is easier said than done. And so we've been working for a number of years now, building on top of IPFS, and we now have a vibrant, growing community of folks actually contributing to a large data commons of useful and verified data sets, or verifiable, I should say.
Hey, Query is so cool. I used to be a data scientist, so it really hits close to home. And whenever I show my friends who are still doing data science stuff, they're like, this is what we need. So it has a special place in my heart. Noam, do you mind going and explaining Morpheus and what's the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. Thank you, Molly and Brendan and Ashley. Hi, great to meet you. And let me say quickly, just big congrats on the Filecoin team for the mainnet launch. Big moment for people and organizations across the globe. So big congrats and thanks for putting on this event today. So yeah, my background is a full stack web developer for many years and very active in information security. I used to run penetration tests for corporations in Ontario and teach secure web development at a college in Toronto. I remain active in education. I'm part of the advisory committee for another college in Toronto on their artificial intelligence course. And I also helped to establish the Crypto Defenders Alliance. The Crypto Defenders Alliance, I believe, is the largest security group dedicated to cryptocurrency and making cryptocurrency safe. But today, specifically wanted to talk about Morpheus Network, of course. Morpheus Network, it's a 3-year-old startup. And we're a supply chain SaaS middleware platform powered by the blockchain. If you know a bit about supply chain, it's a massive industry, but full of inefficiencies. And so Morpheus Network is intensely focused on eliminating those costly inefficiencies. And I'll mention we run on Ethereum, but we're also blockchain agnostic. So we use Hyperledger and EOS, and we're cloud agnostic as well. We run primarily on AWS, but we're also on Azure.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Noam. But Noam knows this, but my dad's a supply chain management professor. So
right.
I've grown up like learning all about like these inefficiencies, and you can move the needle a ton by just making small changes. So I'm really excited about Morpheus. Great. So to dive into our first question, really, when we look at Filecoin today, what the future intermediate term improvements around it are really around like speed and getting better at sealing data, getting better at retrieving data, that sort of thing. Where it is today is a protocol that's really good at backing up data. And I know all of you have looked into it and have started integrations to varying extents for using Filecoin as backup. So Ashley, you've definitely dived in. Brendan has an MVP and Noam's taken a look. So would love to hear from each of you what data you're thinking about backing up to Filecoin and where it really fits into your stack, and really what you see as the potential benefits for using Filecoin for this purpose.
Sure. Should I go first? Well, you can probably tell from the bags under my eyes, we've been cracking on with getting integrated with Filecoin. And, I think for me, the big win here out of this exercise has really been understanding what the technology is capable of right now and where it can go in the future, which I think is somewhere very positive, somewhere very bright. Working together as partners, I think we can definitely get to a place where we can really realize the potential of decentralizing. In my case, in particular, we are a video platform, so we're looking at cold storage for videos. But longer term, we'll be looking at how do we decentralize all of those metrics, all of those points of data that we currently track to pay royalties into IPLD, and giving that a way for external parties to access and build their own recommendation systems on top of it. So, I think it's been a really great experience thus far, and there's obviously some work to go, but I'm really proud to be part of that journey, and I look forward to kind of progressing the entire ecosystem.
I think I can hopefully we'll just preserve the order, and I'll go next. Yeah, so we've been working, just experimenting with Filecoin a little bit, and as David mentioned, set up an MVP in the last little while. That we sort of saw as the easiest first foray into working with Filecoin as an archival tool. And that is Query is a sort of federated model where there's a default place that you can push data for high availability. And we call that query.cloud, which is this sort of source of public data sets that bridges between the two, between Web3 and Web2 effectively. And so we thought for an initial project, it would be great to just build an archive of all the publicly available data sets of all versions on query.cloud and have that available on Filecoin, and use that both as an archive for us because we do actually need to make backups of that data. But at the same time, it has this sort of side benefit of we built an import and export tool that allows you, if you have the sort of drive space locally, to just have a complete replica of the data sets available on cloud delivered in a single file that can then be ingested into a local repository of query data sets. And so that was sort of the first project that we've stood up, and we're sort of delighted to see it actually work. It's great. And so right now we are storing backups of query.cloud on Filecoin, which has been pretty neat. Long-term thinking, we have a really nice sort of interplay between the way that query functions and some sort of cold storage mechanism, where unlike Git, if you've ever used a version control tool like Git, when you pull something, you get everything, you get all the versions, which works really well for source code. That's not the way that we want data to work. Most folks just want the latest version and don't actually want to have this long tail. And so we now have some users who are getting quite large data set histories where thinking in the sort of 50 to 100 commits are kind of the largest that some of these chains are getting. It'd be nice to just say, hey, I would like to take the oldest part of this and just move that over to cold storage and say, you know what, we don't really need to keep sort of all of these data sets available locally. And so we're really excited about that as sort of a long-term, using Filecoin potentially as the sort of cold storage long-term mechanism for both preserving that provenance actually at the byte for byte level and having just your local drive available.
Brendan, that sounds amazing, by the way. In terms of Morpheus Network, supply chain typically deals with three main things. One is the handling of the products. Two is the flow of money. And three is data and documents. And documents, it's a tremendous volume of documents, bill of ladings and purchase orders and delivery orders and regulatory certificates and various other customs documentation. In addition to that, our platform generates a lot of data as we track and trace the movement of product and goods. Example, like IoT devices, as they send us a lot of data, geolocation readings and temperature and humidity and on and on. So we've actually been using IPFS for quite a while now. We've integrated it into our platform and we rely on it. We run our own IPFS nodes, and we love that it's built on Ethereum. And I will say, like myself as a tech person, tech people love shiny new things, right? We always want to play with the latest shiny toys. However, that was not why we decided to go with IPFS. We liked IPFS because of those clear business benefits. That's really what attracted us to it. And those are the customers, you're really looking to attract. You want those people that can evaluate IPFS versus some other options and, decide to choose IPFS over other options. For us, one of the biggest benefits was that cryptographic proof that once a file has been uploaded to IPFS, that it hasn't, changed. There's no way for it to be altered or changed. And then Filecoin as well, what that really helps with for us is availability. Filecoin incentivizes a larger ecosystem of users, which helps then to, distribute more of your data so that you have that high availability.
Awesome, yeah. And actually, I think it's a great segue to another thing that I was pretty interested in hearing from Brendan and Noam, you IPFS folks, where right now we have IPFS and Filecoin's long been thought of as this incentive structure and trustless system to make IPFS work in a public network context. And even before that, though, even before Filecoin mainnet was out, both of you were using IPFS. So would love to hear about. And Noam, you answered the question pretty well. Feel free to chime in with any additions. And Brendan, would love to hear from you too about what IPFS meant to you and what the appeal was for you using it even before Filecoin was around.
Do you want to kick off? Just keep rolling.
I think I touched on some of those points, so I'll happily throw it over to you first.
Totally. I just wanted to see if you want to continue your train of thought.
Please go.
But yeah, I mean, IPFS is, I think, no, the nail on the head, content addressing, right? Referring to things by their hash is the foundation that we build upon. And that's what, for us, the fundamental property that gives us is portable data, which, I mean, we don't for us, that's like just a primitive that we can't actually, we have to start with and build upward. And so, yeah, IPFS is kind of a incredibly important part of the stack. It's hilarious to hear the phrasing of like a pre-Filecoin thing. Like I've been living in the only IPFS universe for so long. And so it's, it's a fundamental tool. It's a great piece of the stack. I love that we can now think about it as hot and cold. I think that's a really exciting sort of like contrast where we can say a lot of the concern with IPFS is often just availability, right? People closing their laptops. And so we want to be able to sort of have that work. So Filecoin hopefully helps complement that.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And then also, I know for you all, the version control piece is really important too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. We sort of, it's really straightforward to layer a version control system on top of a content address system, right? Being able to say, well, this is effectively our composed chain of commits, and commits for us are literally just IPFS hashes. And so it's a really nice composition. The other massive benefit that it has that a lot of our users sort of like discover over time is all the content the query creates is actually available without using the query software itself. You can just use IPFS gateways to resolve everything the query makes, which is at the end of the day just CSV and JSON files. And so being able to just say, hey, give me this content at this place is this incredible magic power that you don't need to know a thing about query, and you can be using query data. And so it really makes this a wonderful sort of ecosystem to build on top of.
And I'll just add to that, if I can, two other benefits that weren't specifically mentioned yet. One is the potential cost saving, versus a traditional storage provider like AWS. And the other key thing is security benefits. Because it's a distributed system, there's a smaller attack surface because there's no central large entity that would typically be a single point of attack. So there's some secure, clear security benefits as well.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for sharing all that. And I'm sure with Filecoin, it's exciting to think about the potential now of extending from IPFS into the Filecoin world. And we've touched on a lot of themes here, but I was just wondering if there was anything distinct where when you like let your imagination run wild a little bit, what the potential of the introduction of Filecoin is incrementally to what you were just doing before with IPFS.
Was that one to me?
Yeah, I mean, Ashley, I know you weren't using IPFS before, but yeah, I mean, I've seen kind of the architecture diagram you've shared of the Filecoin integration, and I'm sure it's a little bit of a deviation of how you're thinking about constructing your whole stack, or data pipelines. Instead of just plug and play, you're thinking about its potential holistically. Would love to hear what the potential in your mind is.
Yeah, I mean, I see at the moment where we are is, we're at a cold storage point of function. In the future, I definitely see the ability to be able to query some of this data and have it permissioned. So this tracking data is able, you're able to access it and query it and build marketplaces around that. And that's something that we're, definitely moving towards. And that's, the future that I see with Filecoin. Does that answer your question? Maybe I misunderstood it.
No, that sounds good. And I know, LiveTree's been around for a little while now, and presumably has gone through a few different iterations of what like the way you're trying to solve your problems are. Would love to maybe get a little bit of the background there, how the evolution has looked, and then how Filecoin looks to solve some of these longer term problems.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the problem that Filecoin is helping us with is data. All of our algorithms and all of our systems are built on data. And, the competitive advantage when you look at us versus YouTube, when you look at us versus other platforms is, how can we build better if you like, app stores of these recommendation systems that sit inside of it. How can we build the next web, which we've been talking about for the last 3 years, to realize that ambition? And I think with the launch of Filecoin, we now have a starting place to actually build the technology on top of it. We're not quite there yet, but we're definitely on the right path. And it's really exciting for me, for someone who has watched this space very closely over the last 3 years and tried many different protocols, tried many different solutions, and having worked with IPFS, not in a professional capacity, but as a technologist, I've always found IPFS to be far superior to any other solution that's there. When you look at Tim Berners-Lee's data, sets, and all of those things are there, but they're not as advanced as where IPFS is. And Filecoin is really just giving us that next level of availability and security. So being able to push that more towards an enterprise type solution, where you can start moving out Azure, which we currently use, or moving out other large data centers and replacing it with a completely different paradigm of how you store data. And I think that's the transformation that's really exciting about Filecoin and the next step in this journey of decentralization.
Totally, yeah. Thanks for sharing. Brendan, Noam, if you had anything you wanted to add, go ahead. Otherwise, we can hop to the next question.
Just to add to that, one thing that I really like about Filecoin is that it's permissionless, meaning that anyone can participate in the network. Anyone can become a storage provider. And what's great is that you can start small, right? You can start on your own personal laptop and start small and become part of the network. So I think that's quite exciting as well.
Yeah, and I would add it's cheaper. I mean, it's a really practical thing, but for us, the only major sort of thing, and it is a major thing, is just the idea that cost of storage going down, and the idea of that means things that you wouldn't have stored before, you might store now. And it's been interesting to build out this MVP where we're sort of understanding what does that entail? What actually does it sort of take to accession data onto and off of Filecoin? And once you sort of understand the mechanics of that, understanding how much it may cost to hang on to something, for us may mean types of analysis that weren't done because you deleted the information may end up being performed at some point in the future. And I think that's the sort of truly interesting thing. We're keeping a close eye on this sort of economics of, hey, how can we actually just achieve really great cost efficiencies? And when you have a cost efficiency, what can you do with that? And for us, that means you can hang on to lots and lots and lots of versions of data, which means that somebody may be able to make use of that.
Awesome. Yeah. Yep. Totally. And we've been talking this entire time a little bit at a high level what the promise is and what the evolution of your all's roadmap and how Filecoin can fit in over time. But we have some people here who actually dug into Filecoin quite a bit now. So we'd love to hear from Ashley and Brendan. Maybe vanilla, what you've liked about the experience so far. But more importantly, Filecoin is it's a protocol and it's new. And when we think about Web 2 technologies, one great thing about them is you don't have to interact with the bare metal ever. And Filecoin, we're developing that piece of our ecosystem. So we'd love to hear about some of the challenges you all have faced and what maybe tooling or services you're looking forward to seeing in the future.
Well, I think certainly what Textile have done with their tool set has really helped. ThreadsDB, Powergate, I think the ambitions there are the right ones. And, we've been using Powergate. We started getting into ThreadsDB. We started exploring, these developer tools. And I think we're at the beginning of that journey. There's going to be issues that, arise from a new network, things like instability and how much it costs and, how do we send things down? What are the confirmation things? What are the error codes? All of these things are not insurmountable, but they are challenges that we've faced. And I think, those are quite minor. If you think about the long-term future, where we are in a year from now, I think it's very bright, and I'm really optimistic about working together with Filecoin and you all, hopefully, to kind of address some of those problems.
Yeah, I think I actually hit the nail on the head. I was going to shout out Textile and the Textile folks, particularly Ignacio and the Power Gate project, really just made it possible. It would not be within the realm. Like we as a startup, we don't have a ton of time on our plates, and so standing up a Lotus node was just not within our current sort of like schedule. And the work that's happening in Textile is just fantastic. Yeah, and I think that speaking to like road bumps, I mean, it's early days, and so we have to acknowledge that and understand that. For us, obviously, just like time in and time out is the big sort of blocker. How long does it actually take to load data on and get data out is a biggie. But yeah, it's really cool. I do think that it's important to note like just how nice having a great community of folks who are quite sort of high-minded and thoughtful and considerate working on this stuff is what keeps you around at the end of the day. I mean, we're all building technology, which is really important, but having sort of good, complementary, constructive conversations is just a really great thing to have. And I've had nothing but that since sort of building out this MVP on Filecoin.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited that there's so much momentum behind getting to the point where we can say, like there are these databases you can run on top of Filecoin, or you can run the service and it has this SLA, and not have to think about all the infinite number of ways you can use this protocol, which is by design, but at the same time, each one of us is interested in a strict subset of that. So totally. Last question. I know we're getting up on time here, but just would love to hear from you all, and okay if you just touch on similar themes to what you've spoken about so far, but just any parting words for the people watching out there who are curious about Filecoin and decentralized storage protocols, maybe work for a true enterprise who's been around for a while, and thinking about the business case and that sort of mindset for something like Filecoin.
So yeah, I mean, just in closing, thanks again to everyone, and thank you for watching us all. I'd leave you with one thing in that, data is at the heart of the internet. It is what the internet is, and it's the most valuable asset we have as human beings. And at the moment, that data is centralized in certain places. And what Filecoin brings is a route to decentralizing it by spreading it out, so thereby changing the economic dynamics that surround that data, and that will affect every part of our lives at some point. And it's a real honor and privilege to be at this stage of the journey, to help that come about.
Yeah, I think my parting words would be watch this space. I think it's worth paying attention to, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on, because these things do tend to change fairly quickly, and it's exciting to see that acceleration. And so we will be watching it. We will be continuing to experiment and continuing to understand how this does or doesn't work, and I think the potential is very much there.
Yeah, and I would say for any company or organization looking to potentially adopt something like IPFS or Filecoin, within your organization, start small. Identify a subset of data that perhaps you can store on Filecoin or IPFS. And once you realize those benefits, then you can perhaps expand it across your organization. So there's the onboarding to this world of IPFS and Filecoin is quite easy. As Ashley and Brandon mentioned, there's a very active, helpful community, filled with good people. So, I think it's a very easy onboarding, and there's a lot of people there to help and assist if you need any help and assistance.